Hello guys! Let's jump right back into the story, continuing with our fresh retelling of this historical narrative. What language the Pelasgian people spoke, I cannot say with any sureness. However, if we may form a guess from the tongue spoken by the Pelasgians of the present day, those, for example, who live at Creston above the Tyrrhenians, who formerly lived in the district named the Seleucus, and were neighbors of the people now called the Dorians, or those again who founded Platia and Silice upon the Hellespont, who had previously lived for some time with the Athenians, or those in short of any other of the cities which have dropped the name, but are in fact Pelasgian. If I say we are to form a guess from any of these, we must declare that the Pelasgians spoke a foreign language. If this were truly so, and the entire Pelasgian race spoke the same tongue, the Athenians, who were certainly Pelasgians, must have changed their language at the same time that they passed into the Greek body, while the language spoken by these two peoples is the same. For it is a certain fact that the people of Creston speak a language unlike any of their neighbors, and the same is true of the Pelasgians. This shows that they both keep the way of speaking which they brought with them into the countries where they are now settled. The Greek race has never, since its first beginning, changed its speech, and at first was small in numbers and of little power. This, at least, seems clear to me. It was a branch of the Pelasgic which separated from the main body, but it gradually spread and grew to a multitude of nations, chiefly by the willing entrance into its ranks of numerous tribes of foreigners. The Pelasgians, on the other hand, were, as I think, a foreign race which never greatly increased in number. On asking about the condition of these two nations, Croesus found that one, the Athenian, was in a state of terrible oppression and trouble under Pisistratus, the son of Hippocrates, who was at that time the ruler of Athens. Hippocrates, when he was a private citizen, is said to have gone once upon a time to Olympia to see the games, when a wonderful sign happened to him. As he was busy sacrificing, the pots which stood near, full of water and of the flesh of the sacrifices, began to boil without the help of fire, so that the water overflowed. Chilon the Lacedaemonian, who happened to be there and to see the sign, advised Hippocrates that if he were unmarried, never to take into his house a wife who could bear him a child. If he already had one, to send her back to her friends. If he had a son, to reject him. Chilon's advice did not at all please Hippocrates, who paid no attention to it, and some time after became the father of Pisistratus. This Pisistratus, at a time when there was civil fighting in Attica, between the party of the seacoast headed by Megacles, the son of Alcmaeon, and that of the plain headed by Lycurgus, one of the Aristolades, formed the plan of making himself ruler, and with this goal created a third party, gathering together a band of supporters. And claiming to be the protector of the Highlanders, he came up with the following trick. He wounded himself and his mules, and then drove his chariot into the marketplace, saying he had just escaped an attack by his enemies, who had tried to kill him as he was on his way into the country. He begged the people to give him a guard to protect his person, reminding them of the glory he had gained when he led the attack upon the Megarians and took the town of Nicaea, at the same time doing many other great deeds. The Athenians, tricked by his story, gave him a band of citizens to serve as a guard, who were to carry clubs instead of spears, and to go with him wherever he went. In this way he gained the rule of Athens, which he continued to hold without disturbing the old offices or changing any of the laws. He ran the state according to the established ways, and his plans were wise and good. However, after a little time, the supporters of Megacles and those of Lycurgus agreed to forget their differences and united to drive him out. So Pisistratus, having by the means described first made himself master of Athens, lost his power again before it had time to take root. No sooner, however, was he gone than the groups which had driven him out fought anew, and at last Megacles, tired with the struggle, sent a messenger to Pisistratus with an offer to put him back on the throne if he would marry his daughter. Pisistratus agreed, and on these terms a deal was made between the two, after which they went on to plan the way of his return. And here the plan they hit upon was the silliest that I find written down, especially when you think that the Greeks have been from very old times set apart from foreigners by greater cleverness and freedom from foolish simple-mindedness, and remembering that the persons on whom this trick was played were not only Greeks but Athenians, who have the fame of being smarter than all other Greeks. There was in the Paeonian district a woman named Phae, whose height was only 3 fingers short of 4 cubits, and who was altogether pleasing to look upon. This woman they dressed in full armor, and telling her how she was to act to seem the part, they placed her in a chariot and drove to the city. Messengers had been sent ahead to go before her and to make an announcement to this effect. Citizens of Athens, receive again Pisistratus with friendly hearts. Minerva, who of all men honors him the most, herself brings him back to her own fortress. This they announced in all directions, and right away the story spread throughout the country districts that Minerva was bringing back her favorite. The people of the city also, fully believing that the woman was the real goddess, bowed down before her and took Pisistratus back. Pisistratus, having in this way got back the rule, married, as agreed, the daughter of Megacles. He decided that there should be no children from the marriage as, however, he already had a family of grown-up sons, and the Alcmaeonid family were thought to be under a curse. His wife at first kept this matter to herself, but after a time, either her mother questioned her, or it may be that she told it on her own. At any rate, she told her mother, and so it reached her father's ears. Megacles, angry at receiving an insult from such a person, in his rage instantly patched up his differences with the opposite group, upon which Pisistratus, knowing what was being planned against him, took himself out of the country. Arriving at Eretre, he held a meeting with his children to decide what was to be done. The opinion of Hippias went out, and it was agreed to try to get back the rule. The first step was to get loans of money from such states as owed them favors. By these means they collected large sums from several countries, especially from the Thebans, who gave them far more than any of the rest. To be brief, time passed, and all was at last made ready for their return. A band of Argive hired soldiers arrived from the Peloponnese, and a certain Naxian named Lycurgus, who offered his services, was very eager in the cause, supplying both men and money. In the 11th year of their exile, the family of Pisistratus set sail from Eretre on their way home. They reached the coast of Attica, near Marathon, where they set up camp, and were joined by their supporters from the capital and by many from the country districts, who loved one-man rule better than freedom. At Athens, while Pisistratus was getting funds, and even after he landed at Marathon, no one paid any mind to what he was doing. When, however, it became known that he had left Marathon and was marching upon the city, preparations were made to fight back. The whole force of the state was gathered and led against the returning exiles. Meanwhile, the army of Pisistratus, which had left Marathon, meeting their opponents near the temple of the Pellenian Minerva, set up their camp facing them. Here a certain fortune-teller, Amphiletus by name, an Acarnanian, moved by a godly feeling, came into the presence of Pisistratus and, approaching him, spoke this prophecy in the hexameter form. Asterisk, now has the cast been made. The net is outspread in the water. Through the moonshiny night the tunnies will enter the meshes. Such was the prophecy spoken under a divine inspiration. Pisistratus, understanding its meaning, said that he accepted the oracle and right away led on his army. The Athenians from the city had just finished their midday meal, after which they had gone, some to dice games, others to sleep, when Pisistratus with his troops fell upon them and put them to flight. As soon as the running away began, Pisistratus thought of a very clever plan so that the people might be led to separate and not join together in a group any more. He put his sons on horses and sent them on ahead to catch up with the runners and tell them to take heart and return each man to his home. The Athenians took the advice, and Pisistratus became for the third time master of Athens. After this he set himself to make his power firmer, with the help of a large number of hired soldiers and by keeping a full treasury, partly supplied from local sources, partly from the countries about the river Strymon. He also demanded hostages from many of the Athenians who had remained at home and not left Athens at his coming. And these he sent to Naxos, which he had taken by force and given over into the care of Lycurgus. Further, he cleansed the island of Delos, as told by an oracle, after the following manner. All the dead bodies which had been buried within sight of the temple he dug up and moved to another part of the island. Thus was the one-man rule of Pisistratus set up at Athens, many of the Athenians having died in the battle, and many others having fled the country together with the son of Alcmaeon. Such was the condition of the Athenians when Croesus asked about them. Going on to look for information about the Lacedaemonians, he learned that after going through a time of great low standing, they had recently been winners in a war with the people of Tegea. For, during the joint rule of Leo and Agasicles, kings of Sparta, the Lacedaemonians, successful in all their other wars, suffered continual defeat at the hands of the Tegeans. At a still earlier time they had been the very worst governed people in Greece, both in matters of internal running and in their relations toward foreigners, from whom they kept entirely apart. The events which led to their being well governed were the following. Lycurgus, a man of importance among the Spartans, had gone to Delphi to visit the oracle. Hardly had he entered the inner shrine when the priestess cried out aloud, "Oh, Thou great Lycurgus that comest to my beautiful dwelling, dear to love, and to all who sit in the halls of Olympus, whether to hail thee a god I know not, or only a mortal, but my hope is strong that a god thou will prove, Lycurgus. Some say besides that the priestess gave to him the whole system of laws which are still followed by the Spartans. The Lacedaemonians, however, themselves say that Lycurgus, when he was guardian of his nephew, Lycurgus, king of Sparta, and ruler in his place, brought them from Crete. For as soon as he became ruler, he changed all of the existing customs, putting new ones in their place which he made sure were followed by all. After this, he arranged everything to do with war, setting up the Enomotia, Triacades, and Sycetia. Besides this, he started the Council of Elders and the Ephors. Such was the way in which the Lacedaemonians became a well-governed people. On the death of Lycurgus, they built him a temple, and ever since they have worshipped him with the greatest respect. Their soil being good, and the population large, they grew quickly to power and became a strong people. As a result, they soon stopped being happy to stay quiet, and, seeing the Arcadians as very much beneath them, they sent to ask the oracle about conquering the whole of Arcadia. The priestess answered them like this: Cravest thou Arcady? Bold is thy craving. I shall not content it. Many the men that in Arcady dwell, whose food is the acorn they will never allow thee. It is not I that am stingy. I will give thee to dance in Tegea, with noisy footfall, and with the measuring line mete out the glorious plain. When the Lacedaemonians got this reply, leaving the rest of Arcadia alone, they marched against the Tegeans, carrying with them chains, so sure had this oracle made them that they would enslave the Tegeans. The battle, however, went against them, and many were taken by the enemy. Then these persons, wearing the chains which they had themselves brought, and tied together in a line, measured the Tegean plain as they did their work. The chains in which they worked were still, in my day, kept at Tegea, where they hung round the walls of the temple of Minerva Aelia. Through all of this early fight with the Tegeans, the Lacedaemonians met with nothing but losses. But in the time of Croesus, under the kings Anaxandrides and Aristo, luck had turned in their favor, in the way which I will now tell. Having been beaten in every fight by their enemy, they sent to Delphi, and asked the oracle what god they must please to win in the war against the Tegeans. The answer of the priestess was that before they could win, they must move to Sparta the bones of Orestes, the son of Agamemnon. Unable to find his burial place, they sent a second time and asked the god where the body of the hero had been put. The following was the answer they got: Level and smooth is the plain where Arcadian Tegea standeth. Their two winds are ever, by strong necessity, blowing, counterstroke, answers stroke, and evil lies upon evil. Their all-teeming earth doth harbor the son of Atrides. Bring thou him to thy city, and then be Tegea's master. Thanks for watching this deep dive into ancient politics, prophecies, and power struggles. If you're finding these historical twists and turns fascinating, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button.